Can you let Prakash and Steve Malenik in, please?
Yeah. Sorry, I'm sorry.
Prakash, if you can hear me, 1 second.
Yep, I can hear you, Serena.
Oh, good. All right, there you go.
Anybody? Brian Foster. Carrie?
Yeah, let me know if there's anyone else here.
Yeah, Brian Foster. Anybody else here? I don't see Prakash.
Prakash, Prakash should be in, right? Prakash, are you in?
Here.
Prakash is in.
Oh, yes, right.
I see
Who
him
said
right here.
732-977-5163?
That's a call-in listener.
Okay, a listener. Okay, as long as it's not.
Yeah, I'm looking through the names right now.
Okay. I don't see.
I don't see Ken Pizzo. Sounds familiar.
With Barclays.
Hold, I just want to close the
So
door.
I'm looking through their daily, like Nicholas and Mayor Bontempo.
I don't see any of those at his route. Not yet.
Mike Nicholas was going to be late. I just told you that.
Okay. Who else?
Uh,
Derek Daly
Derek and
And Mayor.
Bontempo.
Derek, I don't know.
and the mayor. Okay. Yeah, I'll sit with you.
The mayor is coming on. Yes.
Yes, I don't see his name, but he's supposed to be here. All right, we'll keep an eye out for him. All right, can you sit up?
I know Joyce is going to be absent, right?
Correct.
Okay. Well, it's 7:02. Why don't we get started?
Okay.
Okay.
I'll wait for the mayor. I texted the mayor. Hopefully he jumps on shortly.
Okay.
Okay. You ready? Are you recording? Yes. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-10, and regulations governing remote meetings, NJAC 5:39-1.5, I hereby declare this meeting of the Holmdel Township Planning Board to be open and announce that adequate and electronic notice of this meeting was provided in the notices dated January 23rd, February 26th, and April 16th. Notices were sent to the Asbury Park Press, to River Times, The Independent, and posted on the bulletin board on the main access door to Town Hall, filed in the clerk's office, and posted on the township's website. This meeting is being conducted on a remote electronic basis using Zoom with live streaming on Facebook and YouTube, and will be archived on the township's YouTube and Facebook pages. As such, recordings of a public meeting are public records subject to the Open Public Records Act. There will be an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions or provide comments once the meeting is open to the public. At that time, if any member of the public wishes to ask questions or provide comments, please use the raise your hand feature on the bottom or top of the screen, and you will be invited into the meeting by the chairperson one at a time. You will need to have audio and video capability, and you will be sworn in and asked to provide your name and address for the record. You may also dial *9 if assessing this meeting by telephone. Please do not put any questions in the chat, as we do not check that. We will answer your questions if you raise your hand when it's the appropriate time for the public to ask questions. So again, don't put the questions in the chat, please. I appreciate that. Okay, at this time, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a moment of silence, please, for our first responders and all our public safety personnel and our military abroad. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay,
Roll call, sorry.
the mayor just texted, he's not going to be able to join us this evening.
Okay.
I don't want to, I'm not violating HIPAA telling you why. So, okay, yes, roll call, please.
Okay, Mr. Ackerson,
Here.
Mayor Bontempo, Mr. Marcel,
Here,
Mr. Foster,
Here.
Mr. Castaning,
Here.
Mr. King,
Here.
Mr. Nicholas, Ms. Plusas, Mr. Santana,
Here.
Mr. Emma,
Here.
Mr. Daly.
do we know if Mr. Daly, supposedly he sent us the paperwork that he was going to be on tonight. Do we know where he is?
He listened to both tapes so he could be eligible, so that's, I spoke to him earlier.
And he was coming on, right?
I assume so.
All right, well, I don't have his phone number. Oh, I do. Okay, I'm texting him. Until then, I'm going to see Mr. Emma for Joyce.
Okay,
Plusas.
okay,
And if Mr. Derek joins, then he can sit in for the mayor.
okay.
Okay. I'd like to make a change to the agenda, please, and move memorializing resolution number 1 to the end of the agenda for when the vice chair can join us, since I need to recuse myself from that, and then he could pick up from it. So we'll move that to the end of the meeting. Item number 2, request for extension at 51 East Main Street, New Hosp, Block 1101, Lot 14, B-1 zone, approximately 3,000 square foot building. Then it was delayed in obtaining required permits related to replacement of a septic system and encountered an on-site contaminants necessitating remedial action. Zoning protection most likely told as a result of the Permit Extension Act, but applicant prefers the certainty that comes with the board granted extension. Mr. Anderson,
Excuse me for 1 minute. Carrie, can you please let Mr. Daly in?
Good evening, John Anderson. I'll keep my remarks pretty short. I represent.
oh, okay, yeah, he just texted me, I'm on, thanks.
I represent 51 East Main Street.
1 second, Mr. Anderson, if you could hold until we get Derek into the meeting,
Certainly.
Mr. Daly into the meeting. That way he can vote on it and I can seat him. Mr. Daly, you're going to be seated this evening for Mayor Bontempo. Okay, so you'll be voting this evening.
Okay.
All right, go ahead. So we're on item 2. We moved item 1 to the end of the agenda. So we're on item 2, request for extension. Mr. Anderson?
Certainly.
Marty, do you have to, you have questions to ask of Bonnie, all escrow and stuff?
Yeah,
is in-
not for the extension.
Okay,
John Anderson of Foss, San Filippo and Milne on behalf of 51 East Main Street, Holmdel, LLC. I'll keep my remarks pretty brief. It's a fairly routine request and one which may or may not be necessary because there is a Permit Extension Act approved by the legislature, which tolls these types of approvals during the COVID pandemic. In any event, we were an existing 2,800 square foot office building. It was destroyed in a structure fire in January of 2018. We received a zoning protection letter, demolished the building, came before the board, obtained a site plan approval with some variances. Though we had variance relief, generally speaking, we were improving upon existing conditions. We moved the building back further from the road, cured some side setback issues, and overall the application was a pretty nice kind of like-kind replacement, about 200 square feet larger than what was there, but more in keeping with the zoning. Two-way drive instead of a one-way, which would prevent some stacking at the roadway. So a lot of enhancements and improvements. We did encounter some delays. I just did want to clarify the one. It was a misunderstanding on my part. There was no contamination on site.
okay,
Apparently, the foundation was removed. Fill was imported from off-site to fill the hole, and it was more of a matter of just documenting that fill was indeed clean, certified clean fill, which now has been done. We had some other delays working with a neighbor to secure a license agreement because we have a slight encroachment of our existing garage onto their property, but we got that done. And some issues that arose regarding a septic system. It was on septic. The system was old. As we're moving to the new building, it was a decision between trying to maintain the existing field or put in a new. They opted for the new, but there was a little bit of a delay there. Most of the other delays were COVID related, just trying to push through site triangle easements and a site plan agreement with the Township Council, but we've now secured a resolution approving all of them. The only thing remaining to my knowledge is bonding. We do have to put a small bond up. I think the client's inclined to do cash in lieu of bond. With that, we'll be presumably on our way to plan sign off and the ability to apply for building permits on it. But we would ask for the indulgence of the board in granting the 1-year extension, principally because your ordinance has a provision that says that variances expire with the expiration of a site plan approval. So we didn't want to just rely on the tolling. We preferred to come to you, lay the cards on the table and seek that 1 year.
Does anybody have any questions? Okay, can I have a motion to grant the extension for 1 year?
I'll move. Second.
That was
Thank you.
Mr. Casting, and who did the second?
Mr. Forster?
Okay, Mr. Ackerson,
Yes.
Mr. Foster,
Yeah.
Mr. Castaning,
Yes.
Mr. King,
Yes.
Mr. Santana,
Yes.
Mr. Emma,
Yes.
Mr. Daly,
Yes.
Ms. Tomaso.
Yes.
Thank you all very much. Have a nice night.
Thank you. You too, Mr. Anderson. Okay. Continued public hearing, item number 3. Barclay Square at Holmdel, preliminary and final major site plan, number 2020-1, proposed construction of a 60-unit multifamily apartment building and associated site improvements located on Palmer Avenue, designated as Block 52, Lots 17 and 18 on municipal tax map. Property consists of 6.74 acres of undeveloped land in the AHMA, which is the Affordable Housing Multifamily Zone. 48 of the proposed residential apartment units will be market rate and 12 of the units will be affordable. The 60 apartment units will be contained in one building with 116 parking spaces as proposed. Okay. I believe last time we finished with public comment, with public question, and this time will be public comment. But before we move to public comment, I'd like to ask if there's any board members that have anything to add or to ask of the applicant. Mr. Zimmerman, I do have one concern that was brought to my attention. Well, we talked about it a little bit with the fire trucks, but the first aid squad is very concerned and about being able to turn around. You can't really, and honestly, you can't really back. It's very difficult to back an ambulance out. And an ambulance is different than a fire truck. Fire truck comes in for the emergency. When they leave, the emergency is over. However, for ambulance, you come in for the emergency and the emergency is kind of still going on when you leave. So is there a way we can create a turnaround spot for the ambulances or something? Because I don't believe it'll fit in underneath where the additional parking spaces are. You're muted. There you go.
We thank you, Madam Chairwoman. I have our experts available to answer questions like that. So I would defer in the first instance to Louis Zugner, who is a civil engineer. We also have Andrew Ferranda, who is the traffic engineer. He might also be helpful. But
Can we
could
Can we let those two in, please, Carrie?
Mr. Zugner is in.
Good evening.
Is that everybody?
Don't see him.
Yep, they're both in, but they're both muted. No, I'm sorry. Louis is not nope, they're both unmuted. There we go.
Okay.
So Louis, so you heard the comments from the board chairman. Could you respond?
And you're still under oath, just a reminder, everyone's still under oath.
Yes, understood, sir. I understand the chairwoman's question completely, and I think that there would be a way, we'd have to look at how we would find a turnaround and still maintain the same parking count. And it's something that I'm certain we could work through and come up with a good solution to find a way to turn an ambulance around, include that in some particular space so that there's easy access towards the front of the building.
Great, thank you very much.
Andrew, do you have anything to add?
No, I agree with Louis that we would have to look at the parking spaces and seeing the ability to provide a turnaround space very near the building there.
I know you added a handicap spot that you didn't really need last time, right? That's, if my recollection is correct? You know,
That is-
maybe that we can do something there.
Correct.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I was actually thinking something similar. I don't want to try and design it on the fly, but I know we can
Right.
achieve it.
And neither do I, but that's probably where I'm not even a designer, so. So perhaps somewhere there.
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions from any board members? Prakash?
Yeah, thanks, Chairwoman. So thank you, Mr. Zugner and Mr. Zimmerman. I have a few questions. First one, continuing on the theme of first aid, we got a letter from or an email from the chief of first aid that said that the maximum stretcher accommodation in the elevator is 84 by 24. And the Holmdel First Aid Squad uses stretchers that are 80 by 23. So this obviously does not leave much room for EMT and care providers who will be coming on board with the equipment, with other equipment as well. So the question was, could that elevator be expanded to accommodate not only the stretcher, but EMT personnel with equipment?
Madam Chairwoman, I think that's a question for Victor Barr, the architect, who is also available, if we can bring him on.
What are the, I don't have the dimensions of the elevator in front of me. I know that came from my chief, but I answer a lot of calls, so do we have if somebody has the dimensions?
There was an exhibit that we introduced.
I
in
believe
evidence last
they're
time.
standard, right?
I think, Madam Chair, I think that Mr. Santana had indicated that it was 84 by 24, where the stretcher is 80 by 23. Is that correct?
That's
Mr.
correct.
Santana?
Mhm.
So
That's
if
the information I
elevator,
have.
if elevator's 84 by 24, it can accommodate the stretcher. I think his concern was
No, I
beyond,
understand that. How is it? It's only 2 feet wide,
Mhm.
the elevator?
I doubt it.
No.
That's what I'm asking. I don't think that's correct. I think the elevator is probably wider than 2 feet deep.
Yeah, the elevator is 6'3" by 6'3" by 6'9". So 6'3" and 6'9" is the elevator. The stretcher accommodation has to be 84 by 24. So that is that's 7 by 2. So it is bigger than the stretcher dimension.
Yeah, but the question was, could it accommodate EMT personnel with other equipment in addition to the stretcher?
Well, it can definitely accommodate more than the stretcher. I don't know, without knowing the other elements, I don't know whether or not it can accommodate whatever the other elements are, but it is bigger than the accommodation required for the stretcher.
So it's I'm sorry, can you give me the dimensions again? 6'3" by,
6'3" by 6'9" is the interior dimension of the elevator. The requirement for the stretcher is 84 by 24.
6'9" is less
Yeah.
than 84.
So
Right,
it's
The stretcher doesn't fit in the elevator.
6'3" is 72.25.
right.
And
That's why I asked
6'9"
again,
is
because I'm
81.
like,
Right, so it doesn't accommodate the 84 by 24.
Now, well, it does because the stretcher goes in on an angle. It doesn't go in, it goes in on a vertical angle.
well, then back to Mr. Santana's comment, how does anybody else and any kind
in
of
there?
like life-saving equipment, you know, it's all well and good that the stretcher can fit in by itself on a diagonal, but if there's someone that's in respiratory or some kind of cardiac emergency, they're not going to be in there by themselves, and there's going to be equipment that has to go into that elevator as well. You're not going to just shove them in and then run down the stairs. Like, how exactly is someone going to be able to fit in there?
I will do some more research and see whether or not we can increase the size of the elevator.
Because even diagonally, I don't think it fits, to be honest with you.
Yeah, and in an emergency situation, it'll be very difficult to start trying to position the stretcher so that you can close the elevator doors. They have to get in and get out quickly with the EMT personnel. So if it can accommodate maybe a couple of EMT personnel and the stretcher and leave some wiggle room in there as well, that'd be very helpful.
Okay.
I would tell you that is a minimum of 2 people need to be with, a minimum of 2 need to be with the patient. There's usually a medical bag, and some of those things can be put on the back of the stretcher, but and the back of the stretcher does fold about 8 inches, it'll fold up. Unless we have to put the person flat, then nothing folds. So it'll be the full length of the stretcher. If the person's sitting up, we can kind of move the inside in. So I don't see how this is even, how this meets any kind of requirement. I don't understand. You testified, my understanding is you testified when Mr. Santana asked this question about the weeks ago, you said it was, I think you testified to the fact that it was acceptable based on, you know, federal standards or some kind of standards. I don't see how that is.
Well, I testified that it meets the requirement under the IBC code for stretcher access. I will go back and reevaluate it and look at it. However, I still maintain it does meet IBC code requirement for stretcher access.
Does the code say, I'm sorry, does the code say that the minimum requirement is that the stretcher has to go in an angle in an elevator?
Yes, and the code says it has to be 84 by 24. It has to accommodate a stretcher size of 84 by 24 on an angle.
Right, but this is, it says on an angle, Mr. Barr?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, that's not practical. I mean, we all know in an emergency situation, when somebody's having a heart attack and the stretcher has to get out of the elevator, you need to have ample room for them to get the stretcher out quickly and load the patient on the ambulance, not have to wiggle it out to figure it out.
And as I said, I will take a look at it and see if we can increase it. However,
Thank you.
I do want everybody to understand it does meet the requirement of the IBC code.
Okay, Jen, where would I find a copy of the IBC code?
That's got to be like in your construction or your building department.
Okay. Bonnie, can we have please look into that tomorrow? Thank you.
Yes, Eddie.
Thank you, Mr. Barr.
Mrs.
have a
Santana, you have anything else?
Yeah, I have 2 more questions,
Sure.
Chairwoman. The second one is from Mr. Zugner. Mr. Zugner, at last meeting, you mentioned, when I brought up the soil test report, you said it was not only done in 2009, but it was also done in 2015. So I went back to the stormwater management report and I reviewed it. So the 2009 report is a signed report by Mazer. So the engineer who did the report signed it on the day when they did the test and showed and submitted the report. The 2015 data is not a signed report. There are numbers in there saying that it was done in 2015, but we don't know who did it, and it's not a signed report. Can we get a copy of the signed soil test report from 2015?
Yes, the sheets that were submitted were the logs for the borings. It was performed by a firm called Terracon. They're geotechnical engineers. And the entirety of the report is signed. I have the whole report. We just pulled out those particular soil logs because it was a big report and put those within our plan set. So Yes, I can submit the signed report.
Thank you. So continuing on the soil test report, there's a big difference between the height of the water table in 2009 report versus the 2015 report, if I read it correctly. So I'd like you to help me understand if that is the case, and if so, were the tests done on lot 17 versus lot 18 now in 2015?
So the 2009 tests were done for what was the original office building approval on this site. And they were done on the one lot based on that design. In 2015, those tests were done particularly where the basin was and is proposed. So it's the 2015 ones that are located right in the basin that are giving us guidance on the basin design.
Okay, so I want to understand that a little more because the 2009 report indicated, I don't have the exact data in front of me, maybe you can help me, that the water table height was a lot higher than the water table height in 2015. So you're saying that the office complex, the water table at the office complex was a lot near the surface, a lot closer to the surface than the water table where the basin is that right?
So I can't tell you, I mean, I could do a little research on specifically, but they're done at different locations. And then those soil logs are showing a depth, not an elevation. So if they were done at a different location that had a different surface elevation, that groundwater might be similar. And that groundwater elevation does change across most sites to some degree. That's why we needed additional tests to be sure we had ones in where the basin itself would go.
Yeah, so my question is specifically related to the closeness to the surface. So the water table, if lot 17 is the business office building and the water table was a lot closer, and the 2015 report, the water table was further down from the surface and it's closer to the stream, how could that be? It seems to be counterintuitive. So if you could double check that for us and give us the data and tell us why the water table could be farther away from the stream, but closer to the stream, the water table is lower, that'd be very helpful.
Okay.
Okay. The next question I have is also for you, Mr. Zugner, the last one. Remember, I asked for the water table impact analysis on the basements nearby in Palmer Square. I still think we would like to see whatever analysis you have to support your claim that there won't be any increased flooding or waterlogging in those basements. That's all I have.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from any other board members?
Do we know
Bill
if those? Go ahead, Bill, I'm sorry.
That's okay. It was mentioned about a flooding area on Palmer Square at the, I guess it would be the southeast corner, that would not be, the water flow would not go into the ditch and would stay there. Has that been rectified?
Mr. Zimmerman, can I go ahead and answer that?
Yeah, please. Yes, I'm
Okay.
sorry. Please do.
Sure. So we have not resubmitted plans, but we have in the interim looked at all those comments. And I forget the gentleman, the other engineers who had raised those comments about some of the grading along the property line and the different ditches, and took that to heart. While we haven't resubmitted plans, I did go through to look at how we would address that and change that grading. And I'm confident that if we were to move forward, those are all changes we could successfully prove to your engineer that we can make those changes and make it work and change sort of all that property line element by essentially getting the outlet, the emergency outlet out of the basin slightly lower, increasing volume in a few other areas. So we can achieve it.
Thank you.
Brian, Mr. Forster?
I was just curious if we know the actual depth from those two reports that Prakash is talking about. He said it's a large difference, but I'm curious, what was the 09 and what was the 15 depths?
I'll pull it up if you give me a few minutes. I have it on the stormwater management data. Just give me 1 second, unless Mr. Zugner has it handy.
Looking at as we go.
Okay, while we're waiting, why don't, does anyone else have any questions? Seeing none. We'll go with, we'll begin with opening to the public for comments only. We completed questions last week of all the professionals based on the testimony that they gave. We closed the public question portion. So now those of you that are on the call and would like to make a statement, we will bring you in. We'll ask you to be sworn in and that your statements are truthful. And please state your name and address for the record. If you'd like to be heard, please raise your hand. Okay.
Madam Chair, do we want to just confirm with Mr. Melnick that he doesn't have wants to go first if he has any comment?
I think at the last hearing, and thank you, Mr. Flieger, the process was set forth that we'd have public comment and then Mr. Zimmerman and I would make our conclusions.
Yes.
For summary. Okay. I didn't know if you had any initial comments. Okay, that's fine.
No, I guess I'll take this opportunity just to make sure I'm aware of what the applicant is requesting. Mr. Zimmerman, is the applicant requesting a vote of the board tonight? I've heard a lot of your witnesses say that they will look into things and get back to the board. So I think it's fair to the public to know before they make comment what the applicant is requesting tonight.
We would like to have a vote tonight. I think that all the issues that have been raised by the various questions can be resolved with conditions. And that would be our preference.
Okay. Obviously, Madam Chairwoman, I would disagree with that, and I can set the reasons why, but I think maybe more appropriate and to include that argument in my closing.
Certainly. I don't know how many board members are comfortable with that either, so that'll be up for discussion at the end as well. Okay, so Stephanie Falvo. Oh, and then I'm sorry, I hit lower all hands. So if the other gentleman who raised their hand, if you could put it back up, I think, let me see if you did it. Okay, Stephanie Falvo, we're gonna call on you now. And then the other person, Harash, I think maybe was the name, needs to put their hand back up. Okay, Stephanie, Carrie, if you can let Stephanie Falvo in, please.
She's here.
Okay.
Yeah, hi, can you hear me?
I can. Do you have a camera?
I do, but I don't see the option.
Carrie, is there you go. Hello.
Hi, thank you.
Okay,
Just swear you in.
Comment. So the attorney's going to swear you in.
Just raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. And just spell your name for the record, please.
Stephanie, Stephanie, and my last name's Falvo, F as in Frank, ALV.
Thank you.
And your address, please, Stephanie?
I'm at 18 Ambrose Court.
Great, thank you so much.
Yes, thank you so much for allowing for my comment. I've been watching all of these meetings. It's been
Interesting.
mind-blowing. I commend all of you for all the hours that you spend doing this because it is really, really insane and incredible at the same time. But so I'm in Palmer Square. My backyard kind of leads up to the vegetation area, which would be in between the two developments. And I'm concerned about the flooding. As a comment, I guess. I always wanted to talk, but I realized I didn't have a question, really just concerned about the flooding. I know the basin will be there. I'm concerned about the grading that was mentioned in the last meeting and how confident they are that they'll be able to adjust that so that the overflow does not come onto our property because it does get very muddy back there.
Okay.
Anytime it rains, it's extremely saturated. And I'd be worried about that going onto the road as well. My second comment is just about the traffic as well. There was an accident last week right in front of like Holmdel Commons, and all the traffic was diverted onto Palmer Avenue, created an insane backup during the day for hours. So I can't even imagine having another development next to us in addition to the ones that are across from Target, just with the traffic in this area. Thank you for allowing me to give a comment.
Oh, well, thank you very much, Stephanie. Have a good night.
You too.
Okay.
Chairwoman?
Marty, you have your hand up?
No, I'm
Harish-
sorry.
Okay.
That's a-
Harish Magum. And my apologies if saying your name wrong.
wanted to see if you were paying attention, Serena.
We let Harish in. My apologies if I'm saying it wrong.
Yep. Can you see me now?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Hi. Good evening.
Good evening. Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
Let's swear him in first, Serena.
Oh, go right ahead.
Ms. Magrum, do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. And just spell your name for the record and your address. State your address.
Yeah. Harish. Last name is Magam. Magam. Okay.
And your address?
45 Duxbury Court.
Thank you.
Yeah, at Palmer Square, right? We have experienced multiple failures over the years with our own detention basins. And I know one of them is coming right next door. And we had a recent failure where we had several inches of flooding in one of the courts over here, right? And, I don't know if planning board has ever hired a hydrology expert to examine the land for drainage and groundwater and estimate overflow impact, right? That was one of the things which was asked by many folks over the past discussions, I guess, but I don't see that was done or not. So I'm not sure whether we hired a hydrology expert. And of course,
the planning board does not do that. It's not our property to do that on. So we don't have the authority to do that.
okay, so you can just grant permissions, but you don't have authority to do anything on that. Okay.
No, the board receives a drainage report from the applicant, which is reviewed by our engineer. And many questions have been asked about that drainage report. So the board itself doesn't do the analysis, but they review the analysis submitted by the applicant.
Got it.
So one is done, but we are not, we don't do it. They do it.
Okay, got it. Okay. And of course, last time we all asked, right, like, will the builder or the township raise a bond in case we have an issue with the water, right? And for both, I think the answer was no. So basically, the whole thing falls onto our side if there's an issue with the water coming into Palmer Square. So I just want to make sure that you folks, before you grant any permissions on this, to build a complex out there, I would request all of you to think about it, because we have about 168 townhomes right next door, which you don't want to impact our lives, right? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. All righty. Jill Hirschman. And just a reminder, everybody's got 3 minutes, but so far everybody's been very good with their comments.
Okay, can you see me?
We can.
Okay, great.
You raise your right hand.
I swear you in, and then you'll say your name, and then I'll start the timer.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Just spell your name for the record and your address, please.
Sure, it's Jillian Hirschman, Gillian Herschman, and my address is 348 Middlewood Road. I'm in Cherry Tree Village.
Thank you, Jillian. Go right ahead.
Thank you for taking my comment. My concern is over parking. The plan still shows that there are fewer than 2 parking spaces per unit. And in March, I don't think it was adequately explained what what would happen if there's overflow parking during holidays, during birthdays. There's no provision for that. Nor is there any provision for if when snow happens and if the snow is moved into even 1 or 2 or a handful of parking spaces, those are with so few spots. I think that's really going to impact the people there, and they're going to be looking for overflow parking. There's no parking on Palmer. The only places for them to go, there's no municipal lots or anything like that. So the only places for them to go would be Palmer Square, Cherry Tree Village, or Target. I think this was a problem as well when the original plan was proposed in 2015. And I think this might have been one of the reasons that the planning board was against it. Also, just before we were talking about possibly removing at least 1 parking spot, maybe more, to make a turnaround for ambulances and emergency vehicles, which again reduces the number per unit. So I just don't think there's anything set up for, any provision set up for where the overflow parking will go, because there inevitably will be overflow parking.
Okay.
So thank you for taking my comment.
Thank you so much, Jillian. Have a good evening.
You too.
Elise Leibowitz.
Chairwoman, if I could interrupt before they.
Sure.
Anytime you can let me know. I have the data that Brian Foster has.
Okay, I don't know why my.
Sure,
camera's
right
not
after
on.
Ms. Leibowitz goes, then you'll go, then you can give him the information, Prakash, okay?
There you go. We
Okay.
see you now.
Okay, I'm ready. Okay, good evening, everyone. Thanks for allowing the comments.
Miss-
As of the
Miss-
last,
One moment,
Leibowitz,
Elise. We need to
Let's
swear
just
you
swear you
in.
in quick.
oh, sorry.
Just raise your hand. Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes,
And then spell your name again and state your address.
Elise, Alyse, Leibowitz, Liebowitz, 143 Yarmouth Court, Holmdel, Palmer Square.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. As of the March 2021 meeting, recently, it was clear that the planning board had not read the preliminary Rutgers study, and it's now 6 weeks later. And unless this has changed, the planning board should not be making this decision without understanding that report, as it addresses the status of the flooding. And I'm also fairly certain that the planning board hasn't actually examined the site after a heavy rainfall. We've not been allowed to show photos publicly of the current flood situation in the area, or a video that was taken recently that showed an area of the road that was not raised. It's still the same condition. So we all
I
know
just
that
need to, Elise, I just need to stop you for a moment. It's not that you were not allowed. We need to, the way the process works is we couldn't put them on our website as evidence because you need to authenticate them and introduce them yourself. Like, we can't just take them. Like, you have to tell us when you took them. You have to testify to the fact that it was you that took them, what time of
Okay.
year, what's going on.
Can I
So
do that
we can't
now?
just put them up.
they were there.
Certainly.
They were there earlier. Is it possible to do it now? In 2
If
seconds?
you have them to put up to show us, absolutely.
I absolutely do. If I can share my screen.
Sure.
And it says host disabled participant share screening.
Carrie, can you just let her share her screen for the photos, please?
It still says disabled.
Well, yeah, it'll take a second.
Just a minute. While we're waiting, Ms. Leibowitz, how many photos are there, just so I can put it in the record?
There's like 4, I think 4 or 5 of this one. I mean, I'm not going to show every single photo that I've taken over the years. I just took, these are recent though, fairly recent.
Okay.
Elise, are you able to share now?
Yeah, you should be. It came up. I sort of
Yeah.
come across my screen. You're a co-host.
Okay. All right, so share. Okay, so here are a couple of the images. This is further down the road that wasn't raised, which means that in a heavy rain, this is obviously going to happen again. So
Okay,
Okay,
just-
please,
Ms.
can you
Leibowitz,
tell us when you?
Yeah,
I
Go
took
ahead.
these
Go ahead, Mark.
on May 5th, 2017, outside Palmer Square on Palmer Avenue.
that was the first photo or the one we're looking at now?
These are all the same set.
Okay,
Okay, so this is looking backwards toward Middle Road. And this is looking toward Route 35. Middle Road, back
2017,
toward
you
Middle
said.
Road. I'm sorry,
2017?
2017, May 5th, 2017.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, so let me just go back to where I was before. And now that they've been out there, I just want to, want people to understand that this is what ambulances have to deal with as well. And I remember having to call an ambulance when my husband had an asthma attack, and the ambulance could not come down Route 35. They had to turn around during a heavy storm, go all the way around the back and come up Middle Road. So that, as Mr. Masso is very well aware, an EMT situation is pretty critical, and this is what they have to face, and it can only get worse. We all know that the assessments, the township and county public assessments were that there's a severe flooding problem here. I know that Mr. Zugner stated that they based the plans on 2009 modeling, but the water flow has changed since then, especially since the road was raised. And these images show areas of the road that weren't even raised. So they are still in this condition in heavy rain. So I just wanted the township, the planning board and the committee to really take a look at what we would be dealing with another complex on this same road. So many more people, so much more need for medical speed and access. And I just feel that this is something that's pretty frightening. And I don't believe that anybody here on the board or the applicants would want to have to live here and deal with this. So
You
thank
just-
you. And
Just for the record, can you just more clearly identify where, as best you can, where that is? Maybe
this
in
is
relation-
Palmer Avenue.
I understand that, but like where in relation to?
This is
either-
right, if you look at the right side of the image, that's where Cherry Tree Village is, that's the Middletown side. The left side of this image, that little green space that you still see there, that is Palmer Square property, and the traffic is coming from Middle Road in this.
Is it possible to take the document off because it seems like it's cutting
Oh,
off?
sorry, yep. There you go.
Yeah, there you go.
So if you can see,
And where is your development in relation to that?
to the left,
Right, but in front of the arrows or behind the arrows?
well, the arrow is actually just on the edge of our property, but it is still right before the edge of the property. If you come just a little bit before this little bridge thing here,
Okay,
that's that one. And then if you go looking toward Route 35, you can see it is severely underwater. And we do have images from several years back where people were kayaking down Palmer Avenue after a heavy storm.
no, I know.
Yeah, so this is pretty frightening. Nothing can get through here. No ambulance, nothing, no fire truck, nothing. And this part of the road was not raised, so it's the same condition. So please take that into consideration. I mean,
Has
there are
it
lives.
rained? Has it rained? Do you have any photos of rain since the road was raised? any
Not
chance?
here. I'd have to pull them out. These were the easiest to put up here today, and they were easiest to find. I have, as you know, I'm a photographer. I have millions of photos. I have to pull them out of archives, right, left, and center. But these were used, I believe, before. So I wanted to grab the quickest ones for tonight.
Good thing. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Can I go now, Chairwoman?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay.
All right,
So,
we need to stop sharing Elisa's screen and go back to a full screen.
Oh, you can see.
I don't know. It's very.
Sorry. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Elise.
so I'm reading off the data from the two soil report tests. One was done in
Wait 1
2009.
second. Carrie, you can take Elise off the panelist list. She's finished testifying. Go ahead, Prakash. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So as I said, I'm reading the data from the stormwater management report submitted in February. I think the date on that is 2/16, I think. If I remember right. 2/12/21. Okay. So I have data. First, let me give you the data for the 2009 soil test report. That, I believe, is the office building that's closer to the road. There were 3 tests done. They were labeled pits 103, 104, and 105. So for pit number 103, groundwater was encountered at 12 inches. And seasonal high groundwater was also at 12 inches. That's pit 103. Pit 104, groundwater was encountered at 24 inches. seasonal high groundwater is at 18 inches. Pit 105, groundwater was encountered at 30 inches. Seasonal high groundwater also at 30 inches. So that's the 2009 report. Now let me go to the 2015 report. Tests done. Pit number 1 says, so this would be the basin, which is closer to the stream behind the office complex. So pit number 1 says seasonal high water table at 68 inches, groundwater encountered 76 inches. Pit number 2 says seasonal high water table at 64 inches, groundwater encountered 66 inches. So my question is, if closer to the road is at 12 inches, how could something closer to the stream be at 68 or 76 inches? It seems counterintuitive. That's why I needed an explanation.
Mr. Sanantha, if I may, I was gathering the same information at the same time. The ones where the depth to seasonal high groundwater is the least are the areas on the property where it's the lowest. So when I look at the topography, they're much lower elevation than the ones that are deeper. So if I convert it to elevations, the difference is smaller, and they're all in this 23 to 24 foot elevation within about a foot of each other, that seasonal high water table. You are correct that the ones that where that basin is are shown as being slightly higher, although they're all somewhat equivalent in distance to the stream. And none of this seems particularly atypical to me in terms of what I'm looking at as an elevation, as a water table based on different measurements.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand. So you're saying the difference between pit 1, where the groundwater is at 76 inches, done in 2015, and pit number 103 that was done in 2009, that's at 12 inches. The difference in the elevation could be as high as like 60 inches, 5 feet.
The one at 76 inches is around 29 feet in elevation, right at that contour. And the one pit 103, which I believe is the shallowest, that is close to 24.5 feet in elevation. So it's about a 5 foot difference.
Okay. Mr. Euro, are you comfortable with these numbers? Because my worry is that it seems, I mean, I understand what Mr. Zugner says, it's based on the elevation as well. I just want to make sure that the water table is going to be slightly higher. It's not going to be flat. Closer to the stream, right?
Well, I agree with Mr. Zugner's commentary. You are correct that test pits 103, 104, 105 have a shallower depth to the groundwater. Keep in mind that the detention basins are not designed to the groundwater elevation, but to the seasonal high water table, which in most cases is a little bit higher. So I think in test pit 1, the seasonal high water table is roughly 66 inches below the grade, whereas the groundwater may be 78 inches. So as Mr. Zugner did testify, test pits 1 and 2, where the detention basin is going to be, the existing ground elevation is around elevation 29. So that groundwater seasonal high water table is deeper per se. And then the older 2009 test pits 103, it is around elevation 24 and 25. So the data is correct, and I'm comfortable with it. And really the ones that they are designing to are the current 2015 data, which they do have the soil logs to back it up with the different colorations, etc. So I am comfortable with the soil log information that has been presented.
Okay. So one more follow-up question. If you're saying that the apartment complex is going to be in the vicinity of pit number 103, which is at 12 inches, meanwhile, the water table is behind it, would the water table have an impact on flooding in the basement within the apartment complex? Because the elevation is only at 12 inches from the bottom of the basement?
Well, no, first of all, test pitch 103 will be located right underneath the parking lot and the proposed structure. They're bringing in roughly 3 to 4 feet of fill in that location. So there are no basements in the proposed building, and the groundwater table at the middle center of this proposed site will not have an impact on the properties, the Palmer Square properties.
Okay, so my first question you answered, which is when I said the basement, I meant the underground parking lot, or the parking lot at the bottom, where the groundwater is only at 12 inches. The groundwater table is at 12 inches. So you could potentially have an impact where there's flooding in the parking lot. So that's what I was asking.
No,
the parking lot is not underground. It's at grade. And then the building is above it. So if this is below grade parking, it would be a very different conversation, but it's not, it's at grade.
So I just want to make sure I understand that the parking lot itself is going to be built on top of the 3 to 4 feet fill that's going to be put up in that location, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
That is the design, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And Mr. Euro, your testimony is also that should not then flood any of the basements in Palmer Square. Well, I don't think there are any basements in that first row of homes, correct?
I can't attest to where the basements are in Palmer Square. What I can say is that the proposed design where the building and parking lot are going to be, there's going to be 3 to 4 feet of fill. Any stormwater runoff is going to be collected on the surface, directed to inlets, which are then going to be piped into the detention basin at the rear of the building. The impact of the groundwater at the center of the site, in my opinion, will not impact any of the basements on the Palmer Square development.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted to be clear because it was a couple of questions mashed up together there.
Thank you.
Mr. Patel, Sanjay Patel will be next.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Yep.
I'm
Please
Sanjay.
raise your right
Swear you in
hand.
quick? Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Just spell your name for the record and state your address.
SANJAY.
Put your hand down.
Last name Patel, PATEL. Address 52 Duxbury Court, Palmer Square.
Thank you.
Okay. This is my request to all the board members. There are a lot of discussion around 2009 or 2015 reports, but there's a significant change in the recent year. We have a huge amount of property coming on the middle development coming up on the Middletown side. And that has, we are witnessing and we are seeing the changes, right? And I don't know you guys can see, but right, I'm standing, it's a little bit getting dark, but I'm standing right next to the water creek. It's right behind my property there. And there's a lot of water there. And this is the first time I'm seeing in the last 15 years, this water getting stayed here in the creek in this season. Otherwise, it will go away right after the rain. But that's my request, that please take a decision based on the holistic view. There's a huge 100-acre property coming up in Middletown. There's a change in the water table. We are seeing the patterns change, and we are very concerned with water getting into our homes or getting property damage. That's my comment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Patel.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Eileen Chan.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you see me? Hi. You
Yes.
have to swear me in.
Yes, do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
And just again, spell your name and state your address.
My name is Eileen Chan, and I am at 148 Yarmouth Court. I live in the Palmer Square community.
Go ahead.
Okay. So good evening, everyone. I just wanted to share two areas of concerns about what this new housing development will bring. The first is the potential traffic issues, which some others have brought up. At the February meeting, which I attended, the applicant's engineer explained that the data used was historic and that it was based on a 1% annual growth rate. I don't believe this study took into account that new large development that is now being built by Route 35 South across from Palmer Avenue in Middletown. With these new traffic patterns in the area, we are already seeing a significant backup on both sides of Route 35. And I personally avoid Route 35 these days and take Middle Road to get to Palmer Avenue because of the amount of traffic certain times of the day, in that area. It's really crowded. Along with the new proposed development, I can't imagine an estimated 1% annual growth rate being accurate, and I believe that a new traffic study needs to be done in order to take all of these new traffic patterns into consideration. My second area of concern are the school bus stops along Palmer Avenue. The proposed plan of having the school buses not enter the development, but stop along Palmer Avenue and picking up children for school. And this is going to happen 4 times in the morning and 5 times in the afternoon. It just honestly sounds very dangerous to me. I have children in school and I see that, the little ones, they take a lot longer than a couple of seconds to get on the bus. So I understand that this was the same plan that was proposed in 2015. And at that time, the specific plan was deemed unsuitable. So I don't understand why, this plan is now suddenly okay, this school bus plan. So, and I've lived here for over 15 years, and I'm from New York City, so I kind of moved here to get away from all the traffic, and all I'm seeing is just increased traffic along Palmer Avenue and cars going over 40 miles an hour. So I really do hope that the board considers these concerns, and I do appreciate being given the chance to make these comments. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Eileen. Have a good evening. Robert Gangerkey.
And there I am.
Hello. Please raise your right hand.
You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God.
I do.
Okay, you can spell your name for the record and state your address.
Yes, my name is Robert Gangerke, Gengerke, and I live at 77 Arlington Court in Palmer Square. And I'd like to reiterate to agree with a lot of the things that have already been said and are probably going to be said, and that is that they all come down to this. The proposal is unsuitable for the site. And it's always been unsuitable, and making it not require variances doesn't make it suitable. You're just removing the variances. But its size, height, width, and depth, it's all the same plan that was proposed 6 years ago. And that plan was unanimously rejected by the planning board, not simply because it needed a lot of variances, which everybody has sort of implied that that's the case. It's because it was unsuitable on so many other grounds. It was the parking, the school buses, the lack of ability to turn an ambulance around in there. There were so many things that were wrong. And when they voted to reject the plan, the mayor at the time was Eric Hines, and he himself said, I don't even know how this got this far along. It's unsuitable for this site, very clearly. And it's the same plan, it's the same footprint. And why was it unsuitable? There were parking issues, school bus recreation issues. There was a lack of research on the part of the developer. And now it's 6 years later, and what's changed? Well, the flooding is worse, and the county raised a small section of Palmer Avenue. And that's true that Palmer Avenue does not flood as often in the same spot anymore. Instead, the water is, as the county pointed out it would be, pushed off to the side on either side to Cherry Tree Village and Palmer Square and into that property that they want to build on. So that's the flooding. Second, the township requested that Rutgers study the problem, study the flooding with a view toward correcting it. The study's not complete. The planning board hasn't fully examined the preliminary findings. Third, there's new construction on Route 35, as Eileen Chan just pointed out. It's on the Horace Creek. It's on the edge of it, and it overlaps it a little, and it's already increased the traffic. And when it's finished, it'll probably increase the Mahora's flooding, but we don't know. So there are a lot of variables in there. And but we do know worse flooding, no study, outdated maps. Oh, that's the other thing. The maps are 2009 and things have changed. So what's not changed? It's not the size. It's still huge. It's still bigger than Costco. The applicant is still unwilling to make even a single compromise on the size or just the volume. We know because we've asked. And the same applicant has held the same property for years. They've applied for the same construction in the past, and nobody came into this process even aware of some of the most basic facts. Things like how many Palmer Square units have basements, how many Cherry Tree Village units have basements. They all do. So they didn't know or care, and they didn't even know about the number of school buses that stop here. They underestimated it. And they still plan to drop kids on the 40-mile-an-hour road every day. And they still don't have a parking overflow contingency. All these things are still the same. Nothing has changed.
I'm going to ask you, Mr. Ginkerke, to start wrapping it up the 3 minutes.
The basic point is they've ignored or missed somehow so many very basic issues. And we've all got serious, as a result, very serious and very valid concerns about their preparation, about their diligence in this. And it just shows that they haven't even been to the site. They said last time they hadn't even been to the site after a heavy rain. They haven't seen the flooding firsthand. And it shows a kind of an appalling lack of interest, in my opinion. In short, it's the same plan with all the problems. And what Mayor Eric Hines said in 2015 is still the case. It's still true. And that the plan is unsuitable. I appreciate the time, and I'm sorry if I sound a little hot under the collar, but
No, that's okay.
Very near and dear to my heart. And thank you
Yes,
for your time. And
understandable.
listening.
Thank you, Mr. Ginkerke. Mr. Liccato? Jeff, you have your hand up. Do you have a question?
I was just stretching, sorry.
Okay.
How's that? Can you see me?
There you go.
Is that a little bit better?
Ready to swear? Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do. And it's James, James, Liccato, Licato. And I live at 57 Duxbury Court in Palmer Square. Hi, folks. There were two things that I wanted to comment on. The first has to do with fire safety, and in particular, what the Middletown mayor had stated at the last meeting. And I just wanted to remind everybody that we rely heavily on help from our neighboring fire departments, and that this property is on the border of Middletown and is pretty much around the corner from the Hazlitt Fire Department on Middle Road. So the likelihood of either town responding to any emergencies is pretty high. Yet, according to the Middletown mayor at the last meeting, their town had not been consulted regarding this project, and I suspect neither has Hazlitt. So I don't think it's clear whether they can even handle, he wasn't even sure if they can even handle a fire at a building like this that's 4 stories tall. The size of Costco, has no access in the rear of the building, and also has limited access along the sides due to the wetlands. So personally, I think that this project would put residents and neighboring communities like mine at risk, and probably will also put first responders at risk. The second issue I wanted to bring up, I wanted to remind folks, also at the last meeting, I had mentioned that last August I met with Mayor Bontempo, Township Engineer Matlack, and Township Administrator Roundtree. They met with myself and Robert Gingerke in Palmer Square, so we can show them around and show them the effects of the flooding in the area. At the time of the visit, it had not rained in several days, yet the grounds in some of the areas of the community were wet and swampy. I think one of my first neighbors had mentioned that. Also, there was a considerable amount of water in streams only a few feet behind many of our homes. And my neighbor, Sanjay Patel, tried to show that. I wish it was a little lighter out so you could see it. But anyway, Mr. Matlock had a copy of the flood map, and he said that according to the map, the Mahora's Creek is supposed to be set back about 50 to 75 feet behind our homes. He had no idea what these streams were. and they were not accounted for on the flood maps. So to me, that's a red flag right there. We believe that these new streams behind our homes are the direct result of recent constructions and changes in the area. And going way back, before the road was raised, I talked to Mr. Torre when they were in the planning stages, and he made a public statement that while raising the Palmer Avenue roadway would keep the floodwaters off the roadway, it would result in increasing the amount of water in the wooded areas where this property is located and also downstream towards us when the area floods. That to me is significant. And that to me explains the changes that we've been trying to explain all along during these hearings. The bottom line is we don't believe the flood maps are accurate. We think they're outdated given all the changes in the area. And we feel that if you allow construction in this wooded area, that means yet even more flood waters. And mind you, all these flood waters are coming from upstream. They're not coming from this property. So we're not worried about them contributing any more flood waters to the property. We're worried about the stuff coming upstream that is now going to bypass this community when they raise that property. So we feel that we're going to feel the brunt of it. And we're already seeing it with the streams now developing around our homes. So we're asking the planning board at minimum to at least exercise its authority in questioning the accuracy of the flood maps and request that the DEP perform on-site inspections. And we also ask that the planning board request that the Rutgers study be completed so that we know what we're dealing with and we can resolve this problem once and for all. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Liccardo. Next, we'll have the person who has signed in as Zoom user.
Is it me? Can you hear me? Because it's my first time.
Can we see you, please? Put your camera on.
Of course.
Thank
Camera
you.
is on. Can you see me?
No, ma'am.
Let me ask my son quickly, Ray, because it's my first time using it. I'm so sorry.
No problem.
Because he waited for quite like 20 minutes.
We
and I
all
was
need
not
our
called.
kids to help us with technology.
Ray, quickly, Ray.
No worries.
Can I, my camera on?
I'm not.
Camera on.
There you go.
Oh, here we go. Thank you so
Okay.
much, Ray.
You're
Thank you
welcome.
so much.
Okay, so if you can raise your right hand for a moment.
You swear to
Go
tell the
ahead.
whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Okay,
And
and now
spell
we
your
just need
name.
your name and address for the record.
Of course, Liping, Liping, 1 WANG, 78 Arlington Court, Palmer Square.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. So thank you so much for taking my comments. And my concern is traffic and accidents.
Okay.
And some people talked about traffic already. We know traffic on 35 is either extremely congested during peak hours or people drive very fast during non-peak hours. And there are oftentimes people trying to cross the road. Like if you take a drive on 35, and oftentimes you will see people trying to cross the road. And I heard about accidents before, but I never read about them until lately. In the past 6 weeks from March to now, Patch has reported 3 accidents, major accidents. 2 are fatal, and 1 involved 2 hospitalizations. So the first one was on Tuesday, March 2nd. That's 6 weeks ago at 7:30 p.m. A male pedestrian, 29 years old, was killed by multiple vehicles while crossing the main road in front of the Holmdel Motor Inn. He was dead before police arrived. This is directly quoting from Patch. And the second one was Sunday, March 22nd. That was 4 weeks ago, 10:30 a.m. It was a sunny, beautiful Sunday, so very good visibility. And so there was an 87-year-old Hazlet resident died after being hit by a vehicle while attempting to cross Route 35. The third one was most recent, was about a week ago. Wednesday, April the 7th at 10:30 a.m. 4-vehicle collision on Holmdel. 2 individuals remain hospitalized following a Wednesday morning collision involving 4 vehicles on Route 35 in Holmdel. And so I really just, because I've seen, I've seen people crossing Route 35 so often. And then we're putting so many people next to Route 35. I'm really concerned about traffic and major accidents, because it really hurts my heart to see young people, 29 was killed in multiple, by multiple vehicles. And then a very elderly 87-year-old was hit and killed. So yeah. I hope everyone can read about the, reports and take it into consideration. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for your comments. Mr. Battaglia? Mike, I think it was. I wrote down the name so I didn't have to keep going in and out.
Okay. You let me know if you see me.
We can see you very well, just fine.
Okay, I hope not too well. Okay, I just came from practice, so okay. Thanks
Can you
for.
raise your right hand, please?
Oh, yeah. Swear you in quick. You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do. So help me God. Yes.
Okay, and if you could just.
My name is Michael Battaglia. My address is 281 Clubhouse Drive, Middletown, New Jersey. I live in Cherry Tree Village.
Okay, and is it BAT?
T-A-G-L-I-A.
Thank you so much.
Boy, A-T-T-A-G-L-I-A. Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. And first
welcome.
of all, thanks for everybody for being here. I know it's getting late at night. I'll try to make it short and sweet. Everybody raised a lot of valid points here. And the one thing I remember, I was at the meetings back in 2015 when the first builder proposed it. I'm a father of 2. I'm a father of a 9-year-old boy and an 8-year-old little girl. And one thing that we saw the facility is lacking, the project is lacking, is a tot lot or some type of playground. Listen, kids want to play, okay? And they don't really have many places to go when they live in smaller areas like this. And my concern is, one of the things that really racked my brain is, okay, where are these kids going to go? First of all, they live on a very busy road, okay, with a very high speed limit on that road. We have a tot lot at Cherry Tree Village. We have a basketball court and we have a tennis court, okay? We love it, but it's our homeowners pay for that to be maintained, okay, every month out of their dues. No offense to any child that lives there. I love kids. I just came from coaching kids in practice, okay? Our concern is these kids are going to have no place to play. And it's no fault of their own. They're kids. They're going to know. They're all going to find out. They're going to talk. Hey, Cherry Tree has a basketball court. Cherry Tree has a playground, a tot lot. Cherry Tree has a tennis court. Guys, let's go over there. And you know what? It would place a burden on us, but even besides the fact that it would place a burden on us and it would increase the amount of kids playing on it, we have to maintain it. More importantly, let's talk about those kids crossing Palmer Avenue to get to Cherry Tree Village, okay? With all the oncoming traffic from 35, from Target, from the Exxon, and then coming up from Middle Road. Now, I love Alaco Park. I'm a Middletown resident, but first of all, by the way, we're looking forward to the new, you guys are building a new playground in there. It says coming spring of 2021, okay? I love Alaco Park. I've been taking my kids there since they're babies. There's a walk around track. It's incredibly peaceful. Honestly, it's too far of a walk for a young kid to go down the side of Palmer Avenue. And let's remember, folks, there's no sidewalk. There's no continuous sidewalk from the proposed site all the way down to Middle Road to make a left. So I know there's a lot on your plate right here, but let's not forget about the safety of kids. Because listen, I see my 9-year-old and my 8-year-old run across the street because I live right across from the tot lot that's in Cherry Tree Village. And they scare me to death because they don't always look both ways. Now, we're in a parking lot. The cars are only making that turn at 10 miles an hour. Let's think about the person that's texting, coming down, who shouldn't be, But let's say that, let's look at the distracted driver that's coming down Palmer Avenue at 40 miles per hour. People can, folks, can we ask ourselves, are they going to see that 6-year-old boy who wanders off onto Palmer Avenue, who just wants to go play, who just, and is not smart enough at that age to cross the street? So I just urge the board, think about that also. I don't think that was said. Madam Chair, thank you for the time, and I appreciate all your work.
Thank you very much, Ms. Battaglia. Have a good evening, and thank you for coaching the kids to terrific calling. Next, we'll have the person who has a 541084 as their ID. And then we'll have you, Victoria, will be last. Okay, ma'am, you're muted. To unmute yourself, please. There you go. Can you raise your right hand, please?
Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, can we have your name and address, and can you spell it, please?
Yes, my name is Edith Casaglio. I live at 142 Clubhouse Drive in Cherry Tree Village.
Okay.
Casaglio is Coseglio.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Casaglio. You can proceed.
Okay. I want to back up regarding about the basements and the flooding. During the February meeting, it was discussed about the basements in Palmer Square, but nothing was mentioned or no study has been for Cherry Tree Village regarding the basements. Every unit here, which is 241 units, have basements. And in those basements are all the mechanical works that operate the individual units: air conditioning, heat, hot water tanks, washer and dryers. Now, during that one horrendous storm, don't ask me the year, I'm also the property manager for Cherry Tree Village.
Okay.
And I've worked at Cherry Tree Village for 27 years. So I've witnessed all of this. Our residents that are down on Clubhouse Drive, which it affected the 510, 520, 530, 570 buildings. When that flooding came in, these residents lost cars, lost everything that was in the basement that operated the houses. So my concern is, was there ever a study done for Cherry Tree Village regarding flooding coming up through our basements? And I haven't seen that mentioned anywhere. And I've attended most of these meetings. In fact, even the ones that went back quite a few years ago. Now they did raise the road up more toward Middlewood. Now Middlewood did flood, but not as bad as our lower section in Section 5. And I feel that, and I agree with Palmer Square, they raised a portion of Palmer Avenue. But I believe, and I'm not an engineer, an attorney, or whatever, just from seeing what I've seen, is that the road not being raised further down by Clubhouse Drive will affect our residents here in their basements. We also have a detention basin in our development, and the worst one is behind our 260 buildings, where there is a stream that is supposed to be maintained by Middletown. They do dredge it once a month. My opinion, not done properly, but I've had where that stream has backed up, filled up our detention basin, and starts getting very close to one of our tennis courts and to the back of our 260 buildings, our 550 buildings, and our 540 buildings. So my concern, one, as a homeowner, as a property manager, and for the concerns for our residents, I believe that the flooding study has to include Cherry Tree Village. And to my records, I haven't seen any of that done. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ms. Casaglio. Have a good evening. Thank you for your comments. Victoria, I think I'm not going to even attempt it. I don't want to ruin you. And then I see you, Karen.
Good evening. Thank you so much. Don't worry.
You're welcome. I was gonna
it's a
say it, and then I
tough
said, and I wrote it, I rewrote it, and I didn't write it right, so I didn't want to mess it up.
Oh, don't worry. It's fine.
Thank you,
Swearing
thank
in.
you. Go ahead, Marty.
Do you swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and if you could just spell your name for the record, please, and your address?
Yes, Victoria Finkelstein. Finkelstein is Finkelstein, and I reside at 163 Yarmouth Court and Palmer Square.
Thank you.
A lot of what I have to say has already been mentioned, but I just want to go on the record and state that one of my biggest concerns is that most of the information, like the data that they're citing, is so out of date. It might have been appropriate for when the project was first proposed in 2015, but at this point, it's 10, 11 years later, and the area has been developing so much, so the circumstances are not the same, right? And the incomplete flood maps and the outdated surveys, I just feel like it's not really giving us the proper perspective on what the outcome will be once this is constructed. And the parking is going to be an issue. And obviously people aren't allowed to park at Target, right? So where will all these people end up parking? And you're not allowed to park on, you know, Palmer Avenue. And it is a 40-mile-an-hour street. And I don't know if it's been mentioned, but there are no lights here at night. So that traffic in the hours after the sun sets becomes even more dangerous. And with adding so many more cars, this development being built across on Route 35 is adding, you know, hundreds of cars, you know, to the road, and plus this development. So I just feel like a lot of people are already bypassing Route 35 during traffic hours and going through Palmer Avenue to Middle Road. So it's just, it's been a lot more difficult to move around during certain parts of the day. And once we considered like the school bus situation, what Elaine had mentioned earlier, which I agree with, that 1% growth rate is completely incorrect. And the buses that are currently transporting children are pretty much up to, up to their maximum capacity. So that just only means that additional buses will have to be added to the routes. And with all those buses making stops on Palmer Avenue during morning traffic hours, not so worried about the afternoon, but the morning, it's definitely going to make the morning commute more difficult. So I feel like the approach to this project has just been so inconsistent. Like the data is inconsistent. The information that we're being fed is just not what we see and experience in our everyday lives. And so, I'm completely opposed to this.
Okay.
If that matters. Definitely.
Thank you. It does. Thank you so much.
Thank you
have
so
a good
much.
evening. Thank you for
You
your
too.
comments.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And last, Karen Strickland. Thank you, Karen.
Ready? You swear to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Okay,
My name is Karen. My name is Karen Strickland. Karen, Strickland. I live at 26 Hayward Hills Drive here in Holmdel. And I've been watching, I live in a different part of town from this, but I've been watching this Palmer Avenue development for a number of years. And Victoria, right before me, said a lot of what I wanted to say, because as I've been listening to this, it seems like this is just something that people threw together really quickly and said, oh yeah, let's do it. 2009, the water study, the traffic study. I mean, the Rutgers study isn't even complete yet. The old water table information, water tables change, and then you're gonna put 4 feet of fill dirt on top of it, and then what's going to happen? And the business about the stretcher was just kind of appalling to me. And there's been it seems like there's a lot of hand waving. Oh yeah, we'll make it work. Yeah, it'll be okay. And that just doesn't seem to me to be up to the standards of what Holmdel is all about. You know, when there used to be this idea that when you drove into Holmdel, you could see that you were in a different place. You know, there were trees, and there's always this advertising for candidates about a rural bucolic area. And here we're putting a Costco-sized building up with no place for kids to play, with traffic, with no sidewalks. I mean, the stories that the information we've been hearing is a little bit appalling to me, and I'm really disappointed at probably the level of the information that came in. I understand that the motivation to push this is because of the need for affordable housing and to meet our COA obligation. But this is just 12 units. And it seems to me that a 12-unit COA obligation does not warrant this level of building with so little information, and that as a town, we ought to try to figure out a different way to fulfill our COA obligation and maintain the homes and lives of the people in Palmer Avenue and across the street. I hope you will vote this thing down. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
Welcome. Thank you. And thank you for all.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I know we cut you off, but I think you were saying thank you to all of us for what we do, and we appreciate that. Thank you very much. Okay. So it's 8:30. We've been going for an hour and a half. Does anybody want to take a quick break? And then we'll come back and let Mr. Zimmerman and Mr. Millen, I never say it right, Steve.
Steve Works.
Steve Works.
Serena,
Call me Serena.
we should probably close the public comment
Oh,
portion.
yes. Can I make a motion to close the public comment, please?
Move.
Can I have a second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Alrighty, so we'll take a 5-minute recess so people can stretch their legs a little bit and use the restroom or whatever else they need. It's 8:31. We'll be back at 8:36. But don't turn yourself off. You can turn off your camera, but don't leave the meeting itself. Okay, Bonnie? Okay. We just need to wait for Marty and I got Jen. Jeff. Okay, we're just waiting on Marty, Brian. All right. Let's just let him know we're just waiting on first. Oh, there you are. Okay. Marty's in. Everybody's on. Everybody's back. Okie dokie. Steve, would you like to go first? Oh, Mr. Zimmerman, you want to go first?
You're muted.
You're on mute.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for the break. Gave me an opportunity to talk to my client.
Okay.
You asked earlier whether we wanted to vote tonight. And I said that I thought we could take a vote with conditions. I have spoken with my client, and because of the areas where we have volunteered to produce additional information, such as Mr. Barr talking about the stretchers, we would be amenable to adjourning the hearing so that we could investigate the issues that we promised to investigate and file whatever additional materials are needed to, reflect that.
Okay.
So I think that may cut this hearing a little bit short.
Okay, so we'll just set a date for you to, and you'll do your closing on that date after you bring your
I think
stuff.
so. Don't you think, Steve?
Well, yeah, I think it's appropriate to see what the plans are going to be in front of the board.
Right, because what you say now might change.
Yeah, I think we should, though, so we don't get in a situation where at the next hearing, there are members of the public or even myself asking for additional information. Maybe we should go through the list of what the applicant is going to be coming back with in terms of revisions, because I certainly have a list in front of me, just to make sure that they match.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Before we do that, if I could just make a comment.
Certainly.
I felt like we were kind of blindsided tonight by a verbal report from the ambulance corps. This application was filed back in June of last year. This is our third hearing, and we're getting verbal reports from the ambulance corps at this late date. If there are any other reports, we'd like to see them so that we don't go into the next hearing and say, oh, by the way, we've got another report that you've got to deal with, in which case this just goes on and on and on.
Absolutely, that's fair. Does anyone have any other information that they know of? And if you get it in between, certainly that email went to Mr. Santana as the liaison to emergency medicine, not to public safety, sorry, emergency medicine, public safety. And, I only brought up the turnaround because you changed the parking last time. So I just brought it up this time to see if maybe we can find a way to do it.
Glad to do it. Glad to do it. I wasn't talking about you.
No, but and I didn't bring up the stretcher earlier because I'm not measuring the stretcher, but because your professional testified to the fact that it fits, because it did come up. I believe Joyce Plusas brought it up, and Mr. Barr testified that it meets. I wrote it down. Wait, IBC code, and now when I hear what the code is, that worries me because you can't put a person in and leave them on the elevator by themselves. So
I'm just talking about reports.
Yes.
You have
Oh, it
a very
wasn't a
good
report. I
system
believe
for
it was
giving
an
us copies
email.
of reports.
Mr. Santana, it was an email, right? Not a report?
Yeah, it was an email that I received, which I forwarded to our attorney and our administrator, planning board administrator.
And we'll send, if you would like, Mr. Zimmerman and Mr. Manella, we'll send it to you as well. So you see what he said.
Yeah. Yes, please.
You're welcome. And if I could get it, that would be good too. Thank you. And if there's anything else, please, I don't think there will be anything else. And if something comes up, Bonnie, Marty will make sure that you are aware of it well in advance of the next meeting.
And just as a reminder, the public portion is now closed. So other than what Mr. Zimmerman may bring back to us, there really should be nothing else that's admitted at this point. So,
okay, so we could.
Other than how it affects what he's going to give us at the next meeting.
Okay, thank you. All right, so Mrs. Zimmerman, do you want to, maybe it's best if you tell us what you think you need to bring back, and then we could make corrections if any are needed.
Sure. Well, first, obviously, is the stretcher issue.
Yes, okay.
And I'll just use shorthand for all these if it's okay.
Go right ahead.
Let's see. And I'm going to have to ask Mr. Zugner's help here in terms of what we have committed to in terms of looking at the soil logs. Well, certainly we agreed to submit the the signed copy of the 2015 soils report.
Okay. Also, the turnaround space, that's the third item.
Okay. Yep.
Ambulance turnaround. Yep.
Right.
Okay. Lou, am I missing anything in terms of the stormwater that we have committed to?
The water impact analysis on nearby basements.
We never committed to that. I know you asked for it, but we've never committed to that. Now, if the board wants to discuss that, I'd be glad to, but the only person I think that's asked for that is you, Councilman.
Well, Mr. Zimmerman, you can add me to that. I am requesting that as well, and I think it's an important document for the board to consider. I understand that initially your engineer, Mr. Zugner, testified that it wasn't necessary because there weren't basements. We now know there are. I understand your applicant maintains, and Mr. Euro, it seems, agrees that the likelihood is that that analysis will not prove that this application poses any impact to that. But I prefer, and I think the board would as well, not to make assumptions on that, given the long history of flooding and drainage issues on here. And the fact that the DEP did not require it in no way prevents a roadblock for the board to request it if they think that's necessary for their analysis to determine whether an adverse effect is going to be imposed by this project. So I do request that the board consider requiring the applicant bring back that mounting analysis.
Yeah, let me respond to that. First of all, Mr. Zugner did not say that the mounting analysis was needed solely because of the absence of basements. He didn't say that. The fact of the matter is that NJDEP issued a freshwater wetlands general permit in February 2020, and that permit says that the project meets the requirements of the stormwater management rules at NJAC 7:8, and those rules include the groundwater mounding analysis. DEP determined that there is no groundwater mounding issue here. As a matter of fact, DEP didn't even ask for a groundwater study from Mr. Zugner. Mr. Euro has never requested a groundwater mounding study, either in his completeness review or in his substantive review. You, Steve, presented Brian Murphy as an expert witness. You didn't ask him any questions on direct about whether there was a mounding issue. One of the board members, the councilman, asked him a question about mounding, and your own expert said it was possible that there is a groundwater mounding issue. He never said that there was a groundwater mounding issue. None of the professionals in this case has asked for a groundwater mounding study. And as a matter of fact, I would invite the chair at this point to ask Mr. Euro whether he wants a groundwater mounding study, whether he thinks it's necessary in light of all the other professionals that have passed on it before we go chasing issues down rabbit holes.
As our professional, Mr. Euro, would you like to chime in?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair.
Not really.
It's really up to the board whether the board wants to see it. It's not a requirement. The DEP did not requirement. I will review whatever is required by the board. Based on all of the discussions and controversy, it may be worth the submission just to put it to rest.
And to be clear, regarding the conversation and the testimony of Mr. Murphy, he said it was possible because there's no data or analysis to study to make that determination. That's why engineers and these assessments are important for conclusions to be drawn from, not to make assumptions.
Steve, he could have recommended a study and he did not.
I'm asking for it now.
Not only that, the New Jersey Stormwater Management Guidebook states as best practice that it makes a recommendation that we do soil impact analysis for nearby basements, especially when you have a retention basin. It wouldn't make a statement like that if it was not necessary.
I would just like to add respectfully, that's a DEP requirement, and the DEP in this case did not feel compelled to require it. So I just want to be very clear that our requirements in Holmdel do not require that. Our ordinances, that is not a requirement. That's under the DEP. They've applied for the DEP permits and have obtained all of them. So I leave it up to the board, but I just want to make a very clear distinction that our ordinance does not require this study to be done. And so therefore, this is a permitted use with no variances, no waivers, that complies with our ordinances, and that our ordinance does not require this study. So I just want to be very clear that it's not like they are not providing information that our ordinance required. That's not in our jurisdiction. That's an outside agency that they've already obtained permits from. So I just want to be very clear to that point.
If I can just add, Madam Chairwoman, I completely agree with the board's planner. It is not a requirement of the ordinance. However, there's a reason we have planning boards and we have hearings, and we don't check things off of a checklist and deem them complete and move on. And there's a reason the legislature in the municipal land use law set up a board made up of individuals that live in the community, that know its roads best, that know its community best, is because there is still a level of discretion even for these quote unquote as of right projects. And your ordinance spells that out. You have an ordinance that provides that for site plans, you still have to determine, and the applicant still has to prove whether it's going to create quote unquote adverse effects, which is a defined term in your ordinance, which includes issues like this, especially of the nature of when there's so much history revolving around the flooding issues that nobody challenges the accuracy of. So in that context, I think the board is within its right to request that information if it deems it would be helpful in determining whether such adverse effect exists. Not as a requirement of the application or a condition of the application, but as information that could help it to make the determination it's required to under the MLUL and under its ordinance.
I've read all the ordinances and they do not use the words, they do not mention the words groundwater mounding at all.
Mr. Zimmerman, if I could just ask a quick question. I mean, this has just come up a few times, and I know that you guys have not been asked to perform the report. Would it be a terrible burden if we were to ask you guys to move in that direction?
It's how costly is it? First of all,
we keep bringing this up.
Let me defer to Mr. Zugner. Lou?
We've done them before. They can certainly be done. I think as Mr. Zimmerman was talking to before, I mean, this is something we actually have done some preliminary investigation on, as we do with all basins. I think part of it from my perspective is this really seems like chasing a rabbit down a hole. Groundwater mounding is done when we infiltrate big storms, when we don't discharge from basins. This basin discharges all of the regulatory storms. The only infiltration is the water quality storm, which is the smallest amount. This is like 18 inches of water in the bottom of this relatively small pond. So like I've said before, I have no concern as to the outcome showing that we would not impact buildings in Palmer Square. It's more that we're being sent on an errand to create a report and go through the process of reviewing it and going back and forth on something that seems really inconsequential to me. Not inconsequential is the wrong word. It just does not seem like the time and place, and that's why the state did not ask for this report. But it can be done.
What kind of cost and time frame are we talking about, Lou?
We could have it done in the next month before the next meeting. I don't really want to talk to specifics on price. It's not building a bridge. It's not monumental. It's not impossible. It can be done. But it would take us, the better part of the next few weeks to get it ready and get it in time for Mr. Euro to have a chance to review it.
Chairwoman, should we take a vote on this?
we can certainly take a straw poll, or if you want to just take a.
What I
Marty?
would suggest, Serena, is that, I don't know if this is the last of the items. We had 3 that everyone agreed on. This was the 4th item of what they would look at, whether we want to have them do it or not. Is there anything else for the list before you start taking a straw vote? I would, we should know we should not just do piecemeal straw votes.
And I just have a quick question for Mr. Euro. Mr. Euro, are you satisfied with the information that you have, that they have given us to date? If you didn't have the mounding study, I'm just, because, doesn't seem like that question was asked.
Yes, the information that has been provided, I am satisfied with. They meet the township stormwater requirements for the design of the basin and the holding back the storms in accordance with the regulations for the 210 and 100-year storms. They do infiltrate the water quality storm as per DEP requirements, and it does have DEP oversight that it was reviewed by the DEP, and they did provide them with their approval. So the information that has been submitted, we did, as you know, in our reports, we did ask for some technical modifications, clarifications, which the applicant has provided. I believe Mr. Zugner testified earlier today as part of, to our attorney's point, another one of the potential conditions as we move forward is they did do a slight redesign of the basin to address the grading and spot shots along the property line so that they incorporate whatever is flowing onto our property, their property from the adjoiner, and not creating any puddles or ponding situations on the property line. So we would have to review that. But the bulk of the material that has been submitted, we are okay with.
Madam Chairwoman, can I ask the board's engineer a question? I don't want to be out of turn if you don't want me to.
Certainly. He doesn't have to answer it if he doesn't want to, though.
Mr. Yura, just two questions, but one about what you just said, that they submit. I thought Mr. Zugner said he didn't submit plans to address that yet.
He did not. That was going to be one of the additional items to be submitted.
Okay, yeah, that was on my list as well. And correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not an engineer, but are you aware of the new rules regarding that came out with DEP? If this application were submitted today, would DEP require period stop the mounting analysis under the new rules?
I don't know all of the specifics, so I can't answer that. I've read them, but I leave that to my staff to go the deep dive into it. I do not know it off the top of my head. I would have to.
Mr. Zugner could answer that then if he knows.
There are changes, obviously, in the new rules as to how you treat stormwater, but the BMP section on groundwater mounding and how and when it's required has not changed.
Oh, okay. So the answer is no. Okay.
Madam Chairman, if that's an important factor, maybe Mr. Murphy can also weigh in. If that is a factor to the board, whether the new rules would require it or not. Otherwise, I don't want to belabor the point.
My understanding is this application doesn't fall under the new rules.
It does not. It does not. And I've conceded that this is not a requirement. We are not. We are. I'm not.
Well, Mr. Zugner testified that it does not change. So you're telling me you don't believe him?
I'm sorry?
Mr. Zugner just said, unless I misunderstood.
At this
that,
point,
that it doesn't change.
I certainly have
Correct?
every reason to believe Mr. Zugner. I wanted to ask. I could have expanded what changes would apply. In a line of questioning with Mr. Murphy, but we don't have to belabor the point. Again, my contention is not that this is a requirement, but that it may assist the board in its determination. That's all.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Zimmerman, what else do you have?
I have a request of Mr. Malonick.
Yes.
There's been a lot of discussion about whether Mr. Zugner has inspected the basements in the Palmer Square condos nearest to the infiltration basin. There's been some criticism because he hasn't inspected them. Well, we can't get in there without permission. Mr. Malonick, could you get permission from a few of those condo unit owners in that particular building to allow Mr. Zugner to go in and to inspect their basements?
Well, I certainly can't make any promises, but I would be happy to do, and I'm sure I can make such arrangement.
That would be very helpful to us in responding to those questions and criticisms about us not having inspected those basements.
Okay. Okay.
That's all I have. Louis, is there anything else that we promised that, well, we haven't heard the board's decision on the mounding issue, but is there anything else that we promised to produce? I don't think so.
There was one item, I don't know if Mr. Malonick mentioned that or not, but their engineer who was there, who was at the hearing last time, brought up requested some changes on the barrier between Palmer Square and Barclay Square. There was some grading issues and the ground was sloping towards the divider between Palmer Square and Barclay Square. Mr. Malonick, can you expand on that? Or
Yeah, I was going to address it. I think Mr. Zugner's aware. He made reference to making changes to the plans, but just having not submitted those. So I would request of Mr. Zimmerman that those plans be submitted at least 10 days before the next hearing.
Yes, those changes have been made. We will submit them before the next hearing.
Great, thank you.
So let's just be clear. I mean, so that would be the fourth definite item: stretcher, the park-in for the ambulance, the 2015 study, I think there were three or four issues with the grading issues between the two properties. If we're gonna do the, if you're gonna get permission to inspect the basements, that would be number 5, obviously only if you get permission. So that leaves number 6, which is the big discussion we had. But I just want to make it clear
Yeah.
that, Mr. Zimmerman, I don't believe you're required to get everything in 10 days ahead of time, but if you can, that would help. But I don't want to create an issue also, and you miss it by a day, and that creates an issue for somebody to make an objection of your timing.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we have to talk about that in terms of when we have the next meeting.
Correct.
Because I'm very much aware of the 10 day rule. Marty, you mentioned parking for the ambulance. I thought it was just turnaround for the.
I'm sorry,
ambulance.
turnaround. That's what I meant. The parking lot, the turnaround, yes.
Okay.
So there's 5 items plus the 6th one, which I believe, I guess, everyone's in agreement with the first 5. And then there's the 6th, which according to the chairwoman, may want to take a straw vote amongst the board members to see whether we require that mounting analysis.
Yeah.
And Mr. Fligger and Mr. Zimmerman, I had just 2 more on my list that I'd like to
Okay.
read.
Sure.
Okay, go ahead.
One, there's been a lot of comments from the public regarding the insufficiency of the traffic analysis that was performed. First, with respect to the school buses, and second, with respect to an apparent other project that was not considered. Your expert may wish to testify to it now or go back and do more analysis.
We've had extensive testimony about the school buses,
Yep.
and so that's we have extensive testimony about that. So, but as to the other, whether or not you counted the new buildings across the street on 35, you can certainly talk to that now.
Yeah, the traffic on Route 35, I don't disagree. There's traffic on Route 35. What we're talking about here is Palmer Ave. We studied Palmer Ave. As you get over to 35, the 15 trips in and out of the site during the peak periods, the AM peak and the afternoon peak, they are inconsequential, insignificant to the traffic on Route 35. That doesn't mean there isn't traffic on Route 35, and that doesn't mean that traffic will continue to grow on Route 35, but we analyze the traffic where it is impacted by the site, and there is no impact based on the few trips generated by the site.
Andrew, could you talk, I know you've talked about that, but could you talk a little bit more about the number of trips generated by this site?
Yes, roughly, there are 30 trips during the peak hour, and that's broken down between trips in and trips out, 15 in, 15 out, roughly. But that is very inconsequential to the number of the volume of traffic on Palmer Ave. Certainly, we did analysis and we showed that there's gaps in the traffic on the road during peak periods that this traffic can get in and out. Now, I understand there were questions about when the study was done. We did what is prescribed to us, grew the traffic for the 5 years from 2015 to 2020, and we accounted for the traffic on the road in the given year, and then we grew it out to the projected year when the site will be adding trips. So all of that is accounted for in all the modeling that traffic engineers do. We've done it appropriately, and we've shown that the traffic from this site, the few trips, 30 trips during an hour with 15 trips in and 15 trips out, that's 1 every 4 minutes, that there's not a significant impact to the traffic on Palmer Ave. That doesn't mean there isn't traffic on Palmer Ave and there isn't traffic on 35. Certainly there is. I would never argue that there isn't traffic on 35. It's a state highway, but the few trips from this site are very inconsequential when added to the roadway volumes that already exist on those roads.
Mr. Ferranda, so I'm a little confused. I need your help. So I asked you specifically about our 3 school buses that would show up at peak times on Palmer Avenue. And I specifically asked if a study was done for the 3, during the time those 3 school buses are picking up children on Palmer Ave. One is the village school bus, and the other one's the SATs, and the third is the Holmdel High. And I thought you said you had not done that study.
It's not that I said I didn't do the study. We did our counts during the peak periods. The buses typically are offset from the peak periods, but all of that said, buses, and I did extensive testimony on this previously, the buses travel per the routes that are established by the Board of Education. We have no say over when those buses will travel this route, where the bus stops will be. They set that. So what they set is what the residents of this area will have to live with. It's not based on what this site does. It's not based on the Cherry Tree. It's not based on the Palmer Square. It's based on the Board of Education's need to have bus stops and bus routes.
But I understand that, but we already know there are 3 routes, and one's at 7, one's at 9, and the other one's at immediately.
If I may,
following
Mr. Committeeman Santana, we don't know what the route will be. And that's what he's already testified to. And we talked about it extensively. The school board is going to set it up. We only know what time school starts. They could decide to pick them up an hour before, and parents could decide to drive them. You know, when my kids went to Christian Brothers, the school started at 8, they got picked up at 6:36. So that's you know, we had extensive testimony on that. And so I'd like to move on at this point. Mr. Melnick, what was your thing?
That was both of them incorporated in one. That's my list.
Okay, thank you.
The buses are stopping there already.
Yeah, the buses are, they're already going, and there'll be changes, and but he has no control over that, and it's almost it's an impossibility. And the school system's already said they don't, not to be repetitive for the 28,000th time, but they will not go into the development there. So Mr. Andrew, I can't even, my eyes are blurry now, has already testified to that. So we have the 5 that we all agree on.
Correct.
And now if you know, it's up to the board if they want to ask the applicant to do a mounding study. You've heard all the testimony, and we can make a decision as a group as to whether or not we want to put this additional request to the board. Bob, you have your mic off. Did you want to say something, Mr. Euro?
No.
Okay.
Like I said, I leave it up the decision to the board.
I personally don't think Lou seemed to indicate that it would be too big of a nuisance. I'd like to see the report just so we could put it past us and move forward.
I know it seems to. While I hate to give you the additional burden, Mr. Zimmerman, it seems like this would certainly put a lot of people's minds at ease, and especially if you can get into the basements. I don't know how many basements join the property line, but if you can get into those and you could see, and then I'm not one, I think that I think this will just put a lot of people at rest. As long as it's not a tremendous burden on you at this point in time. I know we've been dragging this along for a while.
We'll do the study.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Zimmerman or Mr. Zugner, can you let us know approximately how many basements you think you need to get access to?
Steve, I guess the question is, how many condo units are there in that building?
We'll talk.
We'll talk. We'll figure
Well,
it
I
out.
would assume you just need really the ones that adjoin the property where the 2 properties meet,
Yeah,
right?
I would guess that building has what, 8, 10, 12, and we don't need all of them. We just need to have a sample so we can feel comfortable.
Okay. All right, great. Thank you. And so we have the 6.
Not all units over there have basements, so you just obviously make sure you get units that have basements.
Of course.
Well, Steve, show us some that don't have basements too, if you would, please.
That'll help.
Yeah, it might not be, whatever works. You guys work together and work it out. And then when you come back next time, everybody can feel good about the decision they make at the end of the day.
Mr. Zimmerman and I have cooperated well for over 2 years on this matter, so I'm sure we'll.
Thank you very, very much. I appreciate that.
Agreed.
Okay, Bonnie.
Steve and I will figure it
Serena,
out.
we still need a decision on whether the board wants to ask for more traffic or no. It sounds, I don't want to.
Ask for what?
Left it open. I think we resolved it, but we want to just make sure whether we're going to require any more traffic study information. I think the answer is no, but we kind of left that open. That was the 7th item that Mr. Melnick brought
I'm
up.
personally satisfied with the testimony we've had, unless the board has additional need. I think,
I'm
Okay.
also satisfied.
okay. Everybody, can you shake Bill? Everybody seems to be satisfied. Okay,
Good.
thank
Okay.
you. Bonnie, can you give us, so they'll need about a month, correct? Lou, you said about a month?
Yes. I obviously will work as quickly as I can.
Well, Lou, we got to decide now. If you think it's going to take you a month and we got to get him in 10 days before, maybe we need 6 weeks. What, you think you can get it done in 2 weeks? 3 weeks? So we can get it in 10 days in advance?
I would expect, when I say a month, I'm thinking that we need to get back to a meeting in a month, and that we would have to have it done in, I guess it'd be just a little less than 3 weeks, so that we get it in 10 days ahead, and we can do that.
Okay.
Well, I can give you May 18 or June 15.
Either work for me.
Either work for me.
Lou, that gives you about 2.5 weeks to get it done.
We will work overtime.
Okay.
Do you have, Bonnie, is the township committee meeting? I know the reason why we can't do the 8th is because it's election day.
Well, I'm just going by annual notice. So we go from May 18 to June 15.
Okay.
So if you want to try for May 18, is that what I'm hearing?
We certainly can do
Yes.
that. And if you can't get there, we can always post, we can, what we'll do for you, Mr. Zimmerman, if you can't get it done, is we will hold a meeting at least so that we can carry it without further notice. Okay?
That would be appreciated. We would like to do May 18th if at all possible.
Okay.
Okay, so we're going to carry this without further notice.
To May 18th, 7 p.m.
7 p.m. Okay.
New Zoom credentials for all the members of the public. Pay attention to the website, right, Bonnie?
Yes, please. So for those of you that are listening, there will be no decision made this evening. We're carrying it. The applicant will bring back the six items that were requested. And if in fact they have some difficulty getting it back, please do not be upset if we postpone it again, just so that you're aware now that it may be postponed if they can't get done because of the time constraints and what have you, because the clock is ticking on the 10 days before. So
but they will have new Zoom information for signing in.
Correct. There will be new Zoom information and, so just be aware that if they cannot get it done on May 18th, we will carry this again without further notice. And without, further burdening the applicant to notice again. Okay?
Could I just ask at this point, do you have anything else on the 18th?
No.
So even if we have nothing else, we will open and move you and close. That is if you don't get it in. Think something happens, you don't get into the basements, whatever it is. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
All righty. All right, so that being said, we'll let you guys go home for the evening. We have a little bit more business to take care of.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you all very much. Thank you for your cooperation.
Thank you. I will have that drink you mentioned at the beginning, Chairman.
I'm sure you'll need it. Okie dokie. All righty. Item number 4, consistency review. Ordinance 2021-14, an ordinance amending Chapter 30 Development Regulations of the Code of the Township of Holmdel to recognize and protect critical environment sites within the Metropolitan Planning Area, the PAI. Bonnie, it was sent to us this afternoon, I believe, or yesterday, maybe.
Yes, the consistency was sent out yesterday.
And it's not inconsistent with our ordinance, with our planning, with our master plan.
Correct.
Okay, can I have a motion to accept the consistency review
And direct me to forward it to the township clerk.
and direct Bonnie to forward it to the township clerk?
I'll move.
Thank you.
Second.
Tom?
Okay,
I would caution everybody to look at the state map where the critical environmental sites are, because they could impact future applications or existing ones.
okay, thank you.
Ready?
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. Any opposed? All righty, thank you. Item number 5, request for administrative approval in the Regency generator locations. Homeowners at 13 Lennox Drive appeared before the Technical Review Committee on 3/25/21 via Zoom, for those that are wondering. After the deck was constructed, the stairs were located in the pre-approved generator location. So the new location was reviewed and found to be acceptable by the TRC. The second is homeowners at 50 Jansky Drive appeared before the TRC, again via Zoom, on 4/8. After their deck was expanded to cover the full rear of the dwelling, the pre-approved generator location was no longer available, and a new location was reviewed and found to be acceptable by the TRC. So Bonnie, you need us just to say these are okay, or are you just telling us about it?
You're basically concurring with the decision made by the TRC so that we can officially grant them administrative approval.
Okay, did we get any other information other than what's on here? I don't recall seeing it.
No, it's been approved. It's just a formality to have the planning board, put their blessing on it.
Okay. Does anybody have an issue with this? All
Nope.
right, seeing none, then we'll just move on. Special consulting contracts for 2021. Item number 6 and item number 7, Jen Beam and Robert Euro. As was discussed at the reorganization meeting, Jen and Bob are going to cover, which I think they both probably dropped off, this application, and if the other application for Middle Road doesn't change significantly, they will complete that application. And that is what is reflected in their contracts for 2021. So we just need to make a motion to accept both contracts.
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Yes.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. We removed the minutes from the August 18th meeting. We'll do them another time. Do we have any reports from our professionals?
Nothing at
Anything?
this time.
Nobody nothing? Okay, thank you. And so, do we have anything on May 4th?
No.
Okay, so
That's all.
seeing that there's no agenda available for May 4th, do we want to give Bonnie permission to cancel that meeting if, in fact, there is no agenda? Okay,
Please.
all right.
Second.
All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. So Bonnie will notice that there's no agenda for May 4th, and therefore the meeting has been canceled. Okay, I think that's it. Does anybody want to say anything? Do a dance?
So we have, Serena, you'll have to sign up. We do need the Meridian.
Oh, I have to
Yes.
sign up. Okay, so since Mike did not sign on, Bill, would you, thank you for reminding me that. I'm going to sign off. Bill, would you take over the meeting and then you can adjourn when we're done?
Will do.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your patience this evening and for all your hard work and dedication. We'll
Thanks,
see you
Serena.
in a month. Take care.
Good
Bye.
Okay, the last item is now still what was it? Item 1, Hackinson Meridian Health Ventures, Inc., Wound Center Site Plan Number 2020-5, 737 North Beer Street, Block 36, Lot 35.04. Proposal to install an emergency generator with associated utilities, fencing, and walkways to the service area of the existing medical uses. So So we all received copies of that.
And that was sent to applicant's counsel, who has approved it as well.
So I'll entertain a motion to memorialize that resolution.
Second,
I'm sorry, who was the second?
I'm a second.
Oh, right, okay. Mr. Ackerson,
Yes.
Mr. Foster,
Yes.
Mr. Castaning,
Yes.
Mr. Santana,
Yes.
Mr. Emma.
Yes.
That's it.
So I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Motion, Bill.
Move.
Yeah.
Meeting adjourned.
Good night,
Thanks,
guys.
Thank you.
everybody.
Night.
Thank you.
Everyone.